Are we about to see a united Caribbean very soon? Are all of these islands here going to unite into one regional Caribbean power? What do I mean by that, you might be asking? Very recently, CARICOM, the main faction of the Caribbean, has just allowed free movement and just signed a treaty for deeper integration of all its members in the Caribbean. Now, what is CARICOM, you might be asking? These are all of the members of CARICOM, because I'm aware that many of you don't know much about the Caribbean, let alone the fact that there's a Caribbean faction actually. So yes, this would include Belize, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Haiti, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, Dominica, St. Lucia, Barbados, which is of course my country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname. Again, always open to more members, of course. There are observer states, but I'm not really going to show these observer states because they're just simply observer states and, well, nothing more. They're not actual members of CARICOM. Now, CARICOM and this faction in the Caribbean that most people don't even know existed was supposed to act as a kind of like the Caribbean version of the EU of sorts. Well, it is supposed to have led to that point. It was supposed to encourage deeper cooperation and integration. You know, we all know that these Caribbean islands are very small and by themselves on the global stage, they don't really have much weight, right? So CARICOM was supposed to act as a group. Think of you as you have yourself, but then you have your group of friends. You all act as a group. You're all at one gang. You have much more weight to it, and that's basically the idea of CARICOM. Okay, originally it was an economic alliance, really and truly, kind of like how BRICS is of sorts. BRICS is not really anything more than just an economic alliance, nothing more than just that. However, many people for many years in the Caribbean have been asking, why is it that we don't have deeper integration with our fellow Caribbean sister islands? Because really and truly, whether you're from the British Caribbean, the Spanish Caribbean, Dutch Caribbean, we have similar histories. We're very similar, and honestly, we're kind of not the same, but we're very, very, very similar. We're very close to each other. We have a very deep bond, right, and relationship with each other, that a lot of people have been asking, like, why do we not have deeper integration? And finally, it's finally coming October the 1st. Now, you might be asking, because I've even seen some people that aren't from the Caribbean who were saying that the Caribbean should be a united country. I've seen some people say that before. The reason why this never really happened up until now, let alone deeper integration that we are seeing right now, is because many, not even many, but pretty much all of these leaders from the Caribbean, they don't really, they like their own power in their own little country, right? They want to be kings. They want to be kings in their own castles, right? So the idea of all uniting into one country, it's kind of just like, ugh. And to be honest with you, I don't really want all of us to unite into one country. I love my country, and I would prefer to have my country as an independent country, really and truly. Okay, into one giant country? I don't really think so. I think we should all just be separated but still have deep cooperation, much like the EU. And that's actually what is going to be basically happening. We're going from just a economic alliance to actual deeper integration with the details that I'm about to put, to the point where we are essentially going to, it's just going to be like the Caribbean EU, right? Now, funny enough, actually, the only attempt at a united Caribbean was the West Indies Federation, but that failed. It failed. Britain tried to group all of the British Caribbean aside from the Bahamas, because the Bahamas is technically its own group of islands. So the British just grouped all of these islands and gave Bahamas independence. So it tried to do the same thing that it did with the Bahamas pretty much, and group all of the British Caribbean into one country, into one federation called the West Indies Federation. And it failed due to A, corruption, B, Jamaica and Trinidad, the largest economies and largest countries within the federation, were two basically quite literally bickering amongst themselves on where the capital of the federation should be. Jamaica was saying that it should have been in Jamaica because they're the largest in the federation in terms of population, economy, scale, and all that. Trinidad was saying that it should be in Trinidad because again, it was just stupid quarreling, right? So they couldn't come to an agreement, and Jamaica just left the federation and declared independence from Britain after that. And Trinidad would just also dip from the federation, and that's basically when the federation just collapsed. Since Jamaica and Trinidad was gone, Britain went to Barbados, actually, because Barbados is actually quite good economically speaking. So Britain went to Barbados, and it was thought that Barbados would form like a little union between Barbados and Lucia. You see these islands here. Martinique is the French Caribbean. They're still a French colony. So basically all these British Caribbean countries here, it was thought that they would form a union that would be centered in Barbados, but Barbados was like, no, they didn't really want to manage that, and they simply just preferred to just manage this island. They didn't want to worry about managing all these other islands right over here. And that basically in a nutshell summarizes why the Caribbean hasn't really had like extremely deep corporations for a long time, is because historical context, these islands have been somewhat, they're close to each other, but you hop from one island to the next, things change a lot, right? And due to the fact that we don't really have direct connections with each other and seas blocking us, many people who grew up on these islands, they only know these islands. They only know these islands. They only know the people from the islands. So, it's just like, they don't want to, they don't want to worry about the other islands really and truly. And that's understandable, because I feel the same way. I wouldn't want to freaking unite into a whole big country. I still have some pride in my country. I wouldn't want my country to freaking go and lose its freaking sovereignty. No, definitely not. Barbados is doing just fine as is right now, really and truly. So the idea of just giving up all of that just to be one big country for many Caribbean people is just unthinkable, right? Because for many years, we've had our own distinct countries, nationalities. The idea of just suddenly throwing that away is just like unheard of. Fun fact though, even though the West Indies Federation failed, the West Indies team, the cricket team, the West Indies team from that federation is still with us today, actually. So yes, these Caribbean countries still operate one same cricket team. Even though they're all different countries, they still operate one cricket team from a country that failed. So yeah, again, because we've, you know, people in the Caribbean have been wanting deeper integration, just not too deep of an integration. So even though the West Indies Federation failed, you know, they decided, hey, let's just keep the cricket team. Let's just all operate as one cricket team, right? So you see that pattern where, you know, deeper integration is wanted, but, you know, not too deep, right? And this right here is the ambassador of Barbados, who basically will explain all the benefits of free movement to CARICOM. So
now give us your explanation of what it means for Barbadians and Barbados, this announcement.
Well, you know, this was the big success of the just concluded CARICOM Heads of Government Conference in Jamaica. The fact that we are finally going to have the full freedom of movement regime. This is something that we have been trying to achieve for decades now. We have finally done it. However, not all CARICOM.
Yeah, decades upon decades. It really took this long. Many people, like not even many people, but pretty much all people who were somewhat knowledgeable of geopolitics, as even myself, I've always find it mind-blowing how there's an African Union, there's a European Union, right? Hell, there's even like an Arab League, I think, or like an Arab faction too, I think. I could be wrong about that. You know, there's all these other like types of factions going on, but there wasn't really any like strong integrated Caribbean faction, right? Like for decades, CARICOM was just a, you know, like an economic corporation. That was it, you know, but it wasn't really like a strong economic corporation either. So
CARICOM states are as ready as others. So the 4 member states that said, look, we are ready to start now, are Barbados, Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica. So come 1st of October, these 4 will start. What that means is that the regime will be only for those 4 countries.
Okay, before he continues, because a lot of you guys don't know much about the Caribbean, so he said Barbados, right, my country, St. Vincent, which is right over here, Dominica is right up here, and then you have France in the middle of all this, which with their colony right here. But this is France. This is an integral part of France, so they're not. No, France would have to give them permission to enter CARICOM. And I think he said Belize. I think he said Belize. Yeah, Belize is all the way over here, right? It is in Central America, right? Now you might be saying, what the hell is a Central American doing in the freaking Caribbean faction? This is because historically speaking, Belize has been colonized by Britain, and because of that, it's the only English-speaking Central American country. Belize is technically also considered a part of the British Caribbean as well. And they still do have the British monarchy as their head of state. So Belize is also a British Commonwealth realm as well. So yes, that's why they've had, due to historical and cultural ties, being colonized by Britain, they've historically speaking have had much more deeper connections with the rest of the British Caribbean, because that's what CARICOM really and truly is. CARICOM is mostly British Caribbean led faction, really and truly. Now it's open to others, but that's really and truly what it is.
So the citizens of those 4 countries will have the right to travel to live and to work in these countries without the need for any work permit or any residency permit. When they enter and they start to live and work, they will have certain rights. They will have the right to be treated like the citizen of the country in terms of primary education, secondary education, emergency health care, and primary health care. So what it means for Barbados is that.
So yeah, keep in mind what I said before. This was not a thing before. Okay, before, and I don't know if I have my Barbados passport somewhere around here, but before, it was like, I would have like CARICOM on my Barbados passport, right? Like how the EU have like their passport, have the European Union, and really and truly, they didn't really have any meaning to it, because it's like, if I go into a CARICOM country, it'll just be like, okay, you could stay here for at least like a good couple of months, but then I'll have to leave. I think 6 months, and then I'll have to leave. But really and truly, you could get that not too difficult, right? Like that's, like, again, dude, didn't really have much weight to it. There was really nothing special to it. You didn't really have any benefits to it. I still had to essentially go through the same process of any other foreign national entering a CARICOM country. Now, you might be saying to yourself, like, okay, well, how is this a big deal? How is this a big deal? Why is this a big deal? These small islands are grouping together. Why is that a big deal? Why should I care about that? Well, number one, if these islands do integrate to the point where we see a United States of the Caribbean, because that's what a lot of people are more and more calling for, that could change a lot on the global stage, number one, because the Caribbean is a big strategic region in terms of oil, because it has a shit ton of oil, a lot of undiscovered oil spots, number one. Number two, the Panama Canal is right there. It's a big shipping lane, big shipping highway lane, right? So it's just not just an irrelevant region. It's really not an irrelevant region, guys. Not only that, but this deeper integration would promote economic growth and opportunities for these island nations now, right? Now, some Caribbean countries are rich, and some are poor, and some are in between, really and truly. Like, I find it hilarious whenever I see people who think like all the Caribbean countries are poor. I'm like, well, you're wrong, but you're also right in it that some Caribbean countries are poor. Okay, we have countries like Haiti who are in CARICOM, and if what they're saying is true, then that would actually give Haitians a opportunity to be able to leave their country and go to a different island to actually start their lives, instead of having to try and flee to America all over the place, right? But for the most part, the only real thing holding about these countries is just the crime rate. Again, it really depends on the island. It's so different from every island. Every island is not the same, really and truly. So, but still, for the most part, most of these Caribbean countries are either middle income or high income nations. So, with this deeper integration in this faction now, we could see a lot more economic opportunities, and we could see these Caribbean countries become a lot more richer and prosperous than what we have traditionally have seen. Not only that, but these islands could band together on the global stage, because again, that was the whole point of CARICOM. The whole point of CARICOM was to take these small groups of islands so that, when, there's stuff at the UN or something global on the global stage, these guys can all act together, you know, for the same geopolitical purposes, for the same geopolitical strategic goals, right, on the global stage, right, you know, band together as one so that they can't get pushed over by someone that's too much bigger than them. That's the whole point. So, you know, again, this is kind of a low-key a big deal, and that's why I am doing a video on it, because I, you know, want to highlight that for all my geopolitical nerds who, you know, like to know what is going on with politics and geopolitics, right?
Two things. Barbadians will have the opportunity to seek out life and career employment opportunities in these three CARICOM member states. It also means, very importantly for Barbados, that we are likely to get some infusion of young, economically active people coming in to add to our workforce, because, you know, one of the big problems we face is that we have the demographic picture of a developed country, an aging population. We are not reproducing our population naturally. We actually have a naturally declining population. And we don't have enough relatively young, economically active people contributing to taxation and national insurance. And so it will help us a little.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these problems that these Caribbean countries have that was hampering them, right? A lot of these problems can now be addressed, right? Whether it be like what he was saying here in case of Barbados, the demographic population, even though this is happening with any developed country, any developed rich country is having a demographic crisis right now. That is a fact. Or whether it be, you know, you need more skilled workers, like these other islands, right? These other islands could use that. You know, a whole lot that this would address, right? This basically, you could say that there is a possibility of a United States of the Caribbean. However, with this being implemented for these four countries, eventually it's going to expand to all of CARICOM. This, my friend, is basically going to be a Caribbean version of the EU. So quite literally, the Caribbean Union. There is no United States of the Caribbean yet, but the Caribbean Union is for sure coming with us, which is going to be a big deal on the global stage. Now, a lot of you might not know this, but a lot of these Caribbean countries, they usually don't beef with any, like, they usually tend to not have enemies with a lot of like big partners or countries and whatnot. So, like the Barbados passport is quite a powerful passport. It's like ranked 21 in the world, which is extremely impressive considering that there's much bigger countries than Barbados, right? In fact, Barbadian passport actually even has access to the Schengen area, right? So, you know, so for us to have such a powerful passport already, and then to be able to integrate with the other Caribbean countries around us into essentially one big union like the EU, and to basically act as one, which would low-key already be like kind of like a regional power, that would be that is a big deal on the geopolitical stage. It is, right?
With that.
All right, moving to a place where people coming into Barbados will be able to access the same services that we as citizens do. Do you believe our social services will be able to cope with or handle any huge numbers?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think there will be huge numbers. I mean, and why I say so is because, you know, we have the example of the Skills National program. That program has been in place for 20 years now. And
yeah.
Right now we have 12 categories of skills, and we have never.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is before that there was the Skills National Treaty, which already permitted people who had skilled degrees, skilled types of jobs to be able to freely move around CARICOM countries. Again, you know, that sense of integration, right? You know, it was always there, but again, it just didn't want to be too deep, right? So this is a big deal.
Any flood of people coming in, nor a flood of Bajans going out either. So it has always, the numbers have always been quite modest, and I think that is going to be the case now. But you know, some aspects of our social services,
right? You can tell that this man is a Barbadian because of his accent. Unrelated note. It's funny because you know, regarding his accent, you can really hear, right? I always tell people this. I'm like, your Barbados accent is literally just a British accent. It literally is. You hear any Barbadian speak in like any form of way, like he's talking on the news, it sounds completely British. People, I've had people in my comments who think that I'm just putting on this accent for show. That's not true. That's not true at all. It's just I have a formal way of talking and then I have an informal way of talking, right? Let's continue.
We need to actually look at the concrete reality because, as I said, we have not been producing the same quantity of children as in the past. And so if you look at the numbers in our primary schools, for example, the number of school children have really declined from say 20, 30 years ago. You know, so we have the same school plant, we have the same numbers of teachers, yet we have a lesser quantity of primary school children. So that begs the question as to whether there is that capacity constraint. Of course, the situation may not be the same in other areas, but I think generally speaking, we are satisfied that there's not going to be any deluge of people coming into Barbados.
And these islands don't really have much population anyways. A lot of these people, not even a lot, but literally every single Caribbean person, they've grown so attached to their specific unique island that this would not even be a problem anyway. So like we see this in it with Caribbean people who go overseas to places like America, to places like England, Europe, blah blah blah. They don't usually stay. They usually like to go back home. Most Caribbean people like to go back home because, again, due to their, you know, we tend to grow such an attachment to our countries, and the countries aren't really even that bad to live in. You know, like the only issue is that all you need is just a skilled job and you'll be able to live comfortably in your country, like really and truly, right? You know, to all the people who think, I don't know, like all the entire Caribbean is poor or something. So, you know, compare that to so many people from like so many of these Eastern European countries who will just flee their country and just, you know, don't want to come back, right? You just completely stay in America or wherever the hell they've, you know, flee to. Yeah, Caribbean people aren't like that, right?
We will find that who come into Barbados is kind of balanced off by Barbadians who go looking for opportunities in these other countries. I'm very excited about Belize because Belize, you know, is on the Central American area of land, yes. And new to Barbadians, many Barbadians, a very vast country, a very big country. Emerging opportunities. You go to Belize, you see how many Chinese are there grabbing up the economic opportunities. So maybe there will be opportunities for Barbadians, but I think it's a good start. The 4 countries, what it means now is that we now develop a special relationship because these 3 countries will be the 3 countries that Barbados now has the most intimate relationship with. And I really look forward to it. I think we have broken a psychological barrier in CARICOM. We are certifying that we are not afraid of our neighbors. That these are
Yeah. Many decades. I mean, if you're not from the Caribbean, you wouldn't know this, but for many decades, you know, many decades, man, there was always a call for, you know, a stronger bond, stronger links. But like, you know, these people, you know, everyone was just so attached to their, there's nothing wrong with that, but everyone was just so attached to their, you know, their islands that you know, we just became so docile to it. You know, we were scared of change, like the idea of, oh my goodness, like everything that I just grew up around, you know, just being like replaced, not even replaced, but just the idea of, you know, potentially just, I don't know, I guess people were scared of just losing their national identity, really and truly, because, you know, thinking the idea of just other people from these other countries that you really and truly you've never been to, you've never lived on, just foreign people, you know, it's just foreign people just coming into your country, you know, kind of sounds ludicrous, right? It really and truly, just think about it, right? Imagine you're, I don't know, like in, like you're when the UK, right, was in the EU, and like all these Polish people were just flocking to the UK. You know, we had a lot of people who were saying, like, oh my goodness, all these Polish people, man, you know, like damn, like this is my country, man, this is the UK, bro, like we're these people just coming and flocking here, like golly, bro. You know, we see this with the whole migrant crisis too, where, you know, these people don't even want to integrate, at least. So again, it makes sense, right, why these islands just for so long just really was slow to do anything. But you know, that, like he said, that psychological barrier has been broken. You know, we are more open to each other now, and this will be a big deal in the geopolitical community, really and truly. So
fact, our kith and kin, our brothers and sisters.
All right, thank you so much. Definitely a good start to the conversation. It most like.
So yeah, you know, after decades upon decades, man, you know, these Caribbean leaders, and that's another thing, these Caribbean leaders just don't want to answer to someone else. They don't want to answer to someone higher than them, right? You know how the EU has like the EU Parliament, which is one of the reasons why Britain left the EU, because debatably speaking, the whole EU Parliament and the whole laws being passed in the EU and every EU member having to adhere to those laws is technically breaking their country's sovereignty, right? And you know, being controlled by a freaking parliament in Brussels, your whole country being controlled by a freaking parliament in Brussels is kind of crazy. That's why these Caribbean countries were also afraid of that too, like integrating deeper with each other, because, you know, they didn't want to like end up like that, you know, where they all have their own countries, but they still have to answer to, I don't know, a parliament somewhere, much like the EU. So yeah, think of why Britain left the EU, and I don't know, I guess you could say that we inherited that trait from Britain. But yeah, man, Caribbean Union is coming to us. Now, is there going to be United States of the Caribbean? I don't know. Would I like a United States of the Caribbean? Not really. Should the Caribbean have deeper cooperation with each other? Yes, definitely. Anyways, these two videos, yesterday's video was a bit different. Today's video is a bit different. Like I said, my channel is a primarily reaction channel, but again, I do other types of content when I see fit. Anyways, I hope you guys like this type of video. I don't know how well this video will do, but, you know, just to give some news to some of my, you know, viewers on what's going on, because again, my channel is a channel about the Caribbean perspective. Okay, I give a Caribbean perspective. I give you more light and news on what's going on. Not news, I don't really give news to the Caribbean, but if it affects the geopolitical community, I will give that perspective. I will share it with you so that you all see, because, you know, this is very interesting information going on here. You cannot deny it, right? So anyways, man, you know, thank you for watching. You know, if more details come out regarding this or a United States of the Caribbean, definitely will pounce on that.